Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, it's all about revenge. England take on Croatia at Wembley for a place in next summer's Nations League finals. It's Richard Scudamore and more as the Premier League's outgoing chief executive pockets a £5 million thank you on his way out. And Liverpool striker Daniel Sturridge, he's facing a long ban from the FA if he's found guilty of breaching their betting regulations. Surefire winners with us this morning. Martin Samuel is the chief sports writer at the Daily Mail. Natalie Gedra is a Premier League reporter with ESPN Brazil, and James Olley is the chief football correspondent at the Evening Standard. He's making his debut this morning. Welcome, James. Morning, guys. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Don't forget, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. Dominated by the big game, England against Croatia at Wembley this afternoon, and Wayne Rooney on the back page of the Daily Mail, of the Mail on Sunday this morning. Jealous guys, Rooney. He's spoken to some of his former England colleagues. He says they're jealous of the current team's success into a World Cup semi-final, of course, where they lost against Croatia. They've got a big game against them this afternoon. Rooney, the legends, are jealous of the young England team, they said, dominating the papers. This is the Sunday Times. Gareth Southgate, he says, let's make cocky Croatia pay. Not sure he said those exact words, but he wants them beaten at Wembley this afternoon. We're getting straight onto that this morning. We might have a little chat about this lot as well. Germany, Alf Wiedersson, Pet on their way out, relegated from their Nations League group after Holland beat France last night. Big result, that one. Big story, this, on the back of the Sun. We're coming on to this a little bit later on. Daniel Sturridge, charged by the FA for breaching their betting regulations, exposed, according to the Sun. His cousin tried to put a 10,000 bet on him moving not to West Brom, but to Inter Milan last January. We'll talk about that a bit later on in the programme, as we will with this story. The columnists having their say this morning. Daniel Taylor in The Observer. This is Gordon Taylor at the PFA. The fattest cat, he must go if they're to clean up the image of the game. That's The Observer. Sam Wallace as well in the Sunday Telegraph. Should Taylor cling on to his job at the PFA? Just ask the family of Jeff Assel. It's a pretty emphatic no, I would say, judging by Sam's column this morning. But we're going to talk about England first and the game against Croatia this afternoon, because it feels like a big game now, Martin. It feels like a grudge game and a big opportunity for England to progress to the Nations League final. What does this game say? What does this game mean to you now that England have got this one-off opportunity?
It is a great game of football because it's winner takes all. There is even a permutation to do with the draw that sends a third team through Spain and relegates someone else. And as we all know, nobody wants to be relegated from these groups because you then miss out on these lucrative competitive matches. So it's a very big game, and it's a very big test for the progress of a young England team. Since the World Cup, they're on home soil. They're playing a team that every time you think Croatia have dipped, they pull something out, as they did last week against Spain. So they're a test. They're a proper test, and beating them will be difficult. And it's a great game. It's a great game to show the advancement or otherwise of England this season post World Cup.
And it's a game that we didn't expect. I think
no,
when the Nations League draw was made, we didn't expect it to come down to this, did we?
No, we thought we'd be out of it by now, I would imagine. You look at Spain and not so much Croatia, but Croatia had a very, very good World Cup. But certainly when the draw was made, you're thinking, will Spain win this group? And this is the sort of wooden spoon match, but and it's not. It's a lot more than that, and it's very, very interesting. Yeah,
it is interesting. Have you got the enthusiasm for this game, Natalie? I know you watched Brazil-Uruguay on Friday night. You were at the game at the Emirates. That's a prestige, undoubtedly a glamour game, but it's a friendly.
Yeah.
But this game that England have got this afternoon against Croatia, this suddenly takes on a whole new meaning. It's meaningful.
Yes, it's very exciting because you don't really know what to expect from it. You know, we just saw Croatia beat Spain, and we saw Croatia lose to Spain, and we saw England evolve in the Nations League. And Croatia doesn't have Rakitic, which is a big loss. He's a very important player. He's back at Barcelona because he wasn't feeling 100% fit. And it's interesting to see everything that's been happening to England since Southgate arrived. I was watching one of his press conferences recently, and he mentioned the midfield and how creativity is evolving there, because it's one of the things that caught caught my attention at first when Southgate started his work with the national team is the lack of really different things, exciting things, excitement in the midfield. And you see this evolving. Of course, it's a work in progress, but you see Loftus-Cheek there, you see Lingard, Dele Alli. So there's exciting things going on, and I think it's going to be a very good match. It's going to be interesting to watch. I wouldn't know where to put your
money.
Yes.
We can talk about that in
yes,
part 4.
Exactly.
Gambling in football. Yeah. You've jumped the gun, Natalie.
Yeah.
That's in about an hour's time. We'll talk about betting in football. James, what does Southgate do in terms of his strategy, in terms of his team this afternoon? Because we were impressed with the way England dismantled the USA, whatever the circumstances, whatever the standard of the opposition on Thursday night. What does Southgate do with his team? How does he approach this? Who does he play?
Well, I think the point that Natalie made about the midfield is key, really, because obviously since the World Cup, he's changed the system. 3-5-2 is now 4-3-3. And I think the composition of that midfield three is going to probably tell you how offensive he wants to be. Does he play with 2 holders? Does he maybe go with Dyer and Henderson, or and then maybe Ali ahead of him? Or does he play Harry Winks, who's done well since he's come in? He made 9 changes, I think, for the USA game from the previous win in Spain. So Harry Winks was Ben Chilwell were the only 2 who actually played in both of those games. I think both of those got a fair opportunity to start. The midfield is where it's going to be won or lost. We were passed into submission against Croatia in the World Cup semi-final, and I thought it was interesting that in the 0-0 game in Rijeka, in the Nations League, England had more of the ball in that game, and they played higher up the pitch. They tried to take the game a little bit more to Croatia and didn't sit off them and let them dominate, which really was where England lost that semi-final, because they had chances to win. They were 1-0 up. They could have put the game out of sight. And actually, Marcus Rashford had two very good chances in the 0-0 in Rijeka. So I think if England are clinical and they're on the front foot and they go and really get about Croatia, I think they can win the game today.
Does Rashford have to play this afternoon? Because when he plays for England, he looks like he's free as a bird. When he plays for Manchester United, it just feels like he's under pressure. He has to score, otherwise he gets substituted. And if he comes on as a substitute, he has to score. Otherwise, then his place in the side, or when the place as a substitute is in jeopardy. It never feels quite right at United, whereas England, he just seems to have this confidence about him. He scored the goals against Spain, of course.
I think the front three, Rashford, Kane, Sterling, is England's preferred front three. Now, Jadon Sancho did very well against the USA. It's probably a little bit too early, I think, to come into a competitive game of this magnitude, although as an impact player off the bench, he's very exciting. If you look at Croatia's centre-backs particularly, they're vulnerable to pace, and you look at the attacking power that England have, and I think those front three will fancy their chances if they can get the ball early enough. That's why I think Harry Winks is such a key player for England going forward. His first pass is forward, and the key to the way England plays is to get those players in an advanced attacking position, the ball early enough so they're in space to go and run at teams. And if they can do that today, then they'll cause Croatia all sorts of problems, I think.
Dele Alli in the papers this morning, Martin, says we can be world beaters. He's talking about the improvement in the side under Gareth Southgate. For you, is it a golden era of watching England, of reporting on them, of covering them? And I don't just include the level of performances and the ability that the players have got, but everything around the England team. Is it a favourite period of yours?
I like the manager. I think the manager is a sensible guy. I think most of the things that he does or agrees to
what are you getting at?
Are sensible. And I think England have made great improvements under him. He's not scared to actually coach. His team aren't scared to actually coach, so they get Kyle Walker and they change Kyle Walker's position for a specific tournament, and it's been changed again subsequently. That's all stuff that other coaches, far more experienced coaches than Gareth Southgate, far more renowned coaches than Gareth Southgate, said couldn't happen. You couldn't coach players. You know, this conundrum that there was about Gerrard and Lampard together, and you'd say to Eriksson about it, and he'd say, "Oh, we've never discussed it." And you're thinking, why haven't you discussed it? Why aren't you coaching these two guys on how they can operate together, or finding a solution to this problem? Southgate has done all of that. Southgate's biggest influence is Terry Venables. Terry Venables would, I am sure, have been England's best manager since Alf Ramsey. Certainly that was the way they were heading at Euro '96. they were making real progress, real changes to the way that an England team played. And so I like him. I like him. In terms of is it a golden era, we've been down that road and it never quite... So I think everyone's a little bit wary about golden eras. But are there good young players?
I think more
yes.
in terms of reports being around and reporting on them.
I don't hang around the press conferences that much, Neil. You know that. I turn up in the matches, so I can judge the matches, and the matches are good. You go and you watch England, and you think, you know, we're going to have a go today. We're going to play a bit today. I'm not a great one for barrelling up to St George's Park to listen to all the phony war stuff. You know that.
No, that's the sort of stuff myself.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. Yeah. I've done that.
You're in your ivory tower.
No, excuse me, mate. I've done it. You know, I have done it, but I don't do it. I don't do it now. No, I don't do it now because I've seen enough of it to realise that doesn't make any difference. How many darts competitions they play with the journalists?
It takes me hours to write those pieces.
Exactly, you used to take me hours.
I have to transcribe the tapes.
But it takes, you know, all the stuff about. Yeah,
occasionally.
Occasionally, very occasionally. But all the stuff about, you know, it doesn't matter how many darts tournaments they play with the press to sort of get a good spirit or whatever. That's all nice, but actually what matters is the 90 minutes this afternoon, Croatia, a good team performance. The rest of it, it's nice. But I can't say I ever lost sleep over it when the relationships were bad, and I can't say I ever go to bed thinking, oh, isn't life dandy? Now that it's good, that doesn't matter. I like the football.
But don't you think though that there's a greater understanding though, I think, of what Southgate's trying to do, because they've been more transparent, they are more open. And like you say, maybe they're a bit more meticulous in their preparation than they've been in the past, because, you know, you can ask Gareth more or less anything, and he will answer it, and he will try and explain the reasoning behind it. Now, you might agree with it, you might not, but the fact is that he's willing to actually engage with you on a level that I think previous England managers that I've dealt with don't.
Absolutely, but he gets that from Venables, who did exactly that. So you knew if somebody wasn't in the team or wasn't in the squad, you knew why he wasn't in the team and why he wasn't in the squad. Now, whether you agreed with it or not was another matter. But he would explain that. Not necessarily at press conferences, but he would explain that in conversation with, you know, in the days when you could actually sit down with an England manager and have a conversation over a cup of coffee and stuff like that, and he would tell you certain things about what he was thinking and you know, that he didn't want to say into a microphone, but this is why we don't play Matt Letizia and you know, and this is why we're playing McManaman in that position and stuff. And that's really helpful because then, whether you agree with it or not, you would actually put the manager's opinion into your piece somewhere. You
can contextualise it better, can't you?
Yeah, it gives you context, and that's what has been missing from previous relationships with the England manager.
Is there an aura developing around this England side?
I think so. Ever since I got here 2 years ago, and I started following the national team, and I've seen it change. It's very curious to see that there's a more positive mood that there wasn't before.
Just on this table.
Yeah.
I should have been here 2 years ago, honestly. There's some very depressed figures here.
But it's impressive, really. And if you see things that Southgate is trying, like the match against the United States, okay, it was a friendly match, but it was the youngest starting 11 in 40 years. So that's very exciting. Yeah. And you see players coming up and making debuts, and you see Sancho, who's doing so well, and he's playing one of the most exciting teams in Europe now, that's Borussia. They're doing great, and of course this is helping him to develop, but there's a change of mood, and it's pretty obvious. I used to make jokes with my friends. What is happening? They are always expecting the worst, you know, before the World Cup. The fans were always expecting everything to fall apart at some point. You know, no, we're not gonna qualify to final 16 or quarterfinals. You're kidding me. We're never gonna get there. And the change of mood is very positive. I like it.
What's been impressive, I think, as well, is that it didn't stop with the World Cup. It would have been quite ezy to get to the semi-finals, exceed all expectations, have that summer of love.
We thought it would finish.
Yeah. I know.
But actually,
you did.
One of his biggest credits, I think, to date, or in the calendar year anyway, is that the progress has continued. If you think about the change in formation, the fact that he started to blood some of the new kids, Sancho, Harry Winks, people who weren't, you know, at the World Cup, there's that sense of evolution that's continued, that normally when you get into a tournament cycle, 2-4 years, whatever, that you get to the end of that and there's a kind of, OK, we rip that up, we start again. But actually, because there's not been the inquest, because there's not been the post-mortem that we've all had to do before about where do England go wrong and grassroots football and all of that sort of thing, because there's actually a foundation to build on, Southgate's kept that going, and what a way to sign off it would be this year if they could beat Croatia and win a Nations League that's probably the toughest group of all of them.
Yeah, in this sense that everything's fresh now with the English team, it's just growing, and although you have this continuity in the work, you have this feeling that new things are coming up, you know, and this is gonna happen for the next, I don't know, few months, years, I don't know. But there's a project and it's very clear, and everybody bought this idea. So it's a very interesting moment to watch the English team.
It certainly is. I mean, if they win today, Marty, you'll be in Gareth's press conference later on, won't you, at Wembley?
No, I stopped going to press conferences when George Graham. I don't go to some, but I mean, I stopped. George Graham, when he was out of work at Arsenal and he did some work for the newspaper I was working for, and we were chatting once, and I said to him, "Tell me something. You used to lie about who had played well and who hadn't, didn't you?" And he said yes, he did. That if Kevin Campbell had an absolute nightmare, he would come in and say what a great game Kevin Campbell had, because he wanted to take the pressure off Kevin Campbell, and he knew that there would be some journalists in the room that were quite suggestible, that would be then sort of dashing out and rewriting little bits of their match report because they thought he had a bad game, which he did. And now they're not so sure because the manager's come in and said he's had a good game. And at that point, I thought, right, I'll watch the game and I'll make my own mind up. And, you know, and when I want to speak to a manager, there are other ways to speak to managers.
Yeah, it's not about the words anymore. Words, press conferences, words talking, it's all old-fashioned. It's all about the money.
The press conferences are words. That's the whole point. It's just words. Yeah. There's the gap. There's the map.
Don't worry about the words. We're going to talk about the money. Richard Scudamore, £5 million payoff. That's coming next. Welcome back. We're going to talk now about Richard Scudamore and the £5 million golden handshake on his way out. The outgoing chief executive of the Premier League. He's been there for 19 years. That story caused a storm, a stir in the week. We've had the Wayne Rooney International against the USA. I wonder we'll have the Roo Fest. I want to have the Richard Scudamore, I don't know, what, Premier League Day? Something along those lines?
I thought so.
Should he have a Premier League Day? Should he have this £5 million golden handshake, James? No,
he shouldn't really. I mean, look, the business argument makes sense in that £5 million as a commensurate value to what he's brought in terms of TV revenue over the 19 years. I think a lot of chief executives, a lot of business people in football will say, fair enough. It's proportionate to the amount of money that he's brought in, arguably undervalues him in terms of what he's brought in. However, ultimately, this just shows the detachment of that group of people from the rest of us, the fans, the people who actually pay in the money that underpins the entirety of the success of the game in this country. The Premier League is the most successful British export probably of anything in the last 25, 30 years. So I understand that, you know, he may feel that after 19 years of loyal service to that and being a key player in that growth, he deserves a payoff. However, when you think about all of the places that money could have gone, the idea that there was never a central pot available to go and fund this charity or that initiative or the cap ticket prices here or do whatever there, that argument falls foul now because the clubs have been able to find £5 million under pressure from the remuneration committee, albeit, but the clubs have found this money to give a chief executive, who, by the way, had already earned about £26 million, another £5 million as a golden handshake. I think it's a bit of an insult to most of the matchday going fans.
Natalie?
Yeah, I think it's too much. And first, it's just a shame because we know everything that he's done for the Premier League. There's no argument against that. And it's a shame that his farewell turned out around this discussion. That's all we are talking about, you know. And I absolutely agree with James, because if you see the game, there's so many things that you could do with this money, and that is why the fans are so insulted and so they just can't believe that this is actually being considered. Yes, yeah. and it's going to happen apparently. But I don't agree with that, and I think it's a shame that there's so much discussion to the guy that's been here for 19 years and transformed the Premier League completely. It's a shame that it turned out that his last month turned out to be around this discussion.
He'll just hand it back, won't he, Martin?
No, I don't know what he'll do with it, really. They can't believe what he's done for them. They cannot believe what he's done for them. In that room, in the week for his leaving due, they're absolutely in awe of him, the clubs, because of what he has done for this league. They cannot believe the money that this league is making. The other big leagues of Europe, leagues that we've always looked at and gone, why can't we be? They are destroying their own leagues in a desperate attempt to be a pale imitation of what this Premier League is. La Liga, the Bundesliga, Serie A, they're like weasels in a sack. European Super League, let's give more money from the Champions League. How can we claw more money on this? Let's exclude all the little clubs. Let's do this. And all they're actually trying to do is recreate what Richard Scudamore did for the Premier League in his negotiations with worldwide television organisations. That's why they've given him that money. They want some connection with him beyond when he left. On the day that he left, all they've been trying to do ever since is persuade him to reconsider. And now they've given him this money. Maybe that enables them to keep connected, to put in a call, to ask a little bit of advice. Not because whoever succeeds him isn't going to be good at their job. I mean, whoever succeeds him, by the sounds of it, they've got somebody from a television background precisely to try to recreate what Richard Scudamore did for the Premier League. But the connection of this payment with the fans, say, this isn't anything to do with the fans, if you see what I mean. There's two totally different entities at work here. This is a payment that comes not from the game as a whole, but from 20 clubs, and 20 clubs that change over time. I think there must be over 40 of them there that have been in the Premier League, that cannot believe how well this league has done. And they thank him for it. And that's why they're giving him the money. So I take all of the things about, it could be used for this, or it could be used for that, but those two things are not actually connected. This is to do with the success of the modern Premier League.
But is it not money going out of the game? I've spoken to a few agents this week who said, well, hang on, the next time the Premier League complain about agents' fees...
Yeah, oh, no,
what about that £5 million?
But the money going out of the game argument is always there. People talk about money to players. Everything's money going out the game, unless it's being put into the under-18 team or into a new stand or cheaper tickets. People regard it as money going out the game. Players' fees are money going out the game. Transfer fees are money going out the game. Agents' fees are money going out the game. Players' salaries money going out the game. So yeah, it is money going out the game.
Taking the money,
they wouldn't have the money in the game. That's the way that they see it, that they wouldn't have the money in this game without the stewardship of Richard Scudamore. So I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. That's why it is.
Did they not already have the product, the Premier League?
Not in
Are we saying this is the only man walking the earth who could have negotiated deals of this size?
Well, if you see what I mean, you'll never know that, will you? You'll never know that. By the looks of it, they've done better than they expected. By the looks of it, when he came in with the last television deal, they weren't expecting that. Now, they feel very, very well disposed towards Richard Scudamore. He's been the chief. You've only got to look at his successor to see the chief executive the clubs want. They don't want a regulator. They want a facilitator. They don't want someone to tell them what to do. They want someone who will work for them.
Well, it's a members' club, isn't it?
That's right. So they'll work. He worked for them, and he worked for them in an extraordinarily successful way. You know, that's why he got the payment he did.
I just, from an image point of view,
Completely agree.
We already think of the Premier League as being overtly
Completely
riddled with greed, and this is just another example of it. And I think actually the way that the story came out, Matt Lawton wrote it, I think on Tuesday, the fact that it had been leaked in that way, or it came out in that way, actually gave Richard Scudamore a perfect PR opportunity to say, actually, I won't accept this money. Bruce Buck has organised this. I didn't know anything about it. I'm very flattered, but I've earned 26 million quid. Thank you very much. Goodbye. He could have done that.
Pay a bit of tax on that.
And he chose not. Well, yeah, but he's already comfortably, you know, 5 million quid is not going to change his life, if you know what I mean. As much as it would change anyone's life, but you know what I mean. And yet he decided, actually, I've seen 48 hours of absolute opposition to this from media, from fans, from everybody, but I'm going to take it anyway. And I just think, for all the good he's done, and such a skilled operator as he is, he's just tarnished his legacy that little bit by deciding to take the money and run.
OK. We know the new chief executive is Susanna Dinich. What's in her intro? What do you think the first things that she'll need to look at as the Premier League's new chief executive? Well,
if you see her profile, you see that she's very experienced with television. So we have we have technologies and we have new medias coming, and I think that's going to be a priority. I think she, as a person with her CV, Premier League choosing her makes a statement that they are concerned about how media is changing with new deals, with new platforms, and considering her experience, I think it's going to be good for the Premier League. Of course, we can't expect a new Richard Scudamore. She's going to be different because times change, priorities change. Premier League needs different things. It needs to keep updating itself. It's a model for the rest of Europe, and in terms of broadcasting, it's very important for them to keep up with that. So I think she's going to be good at it.
In terms of the image, Natalie, of the Premier League, how does it compare with football back at home?
Oh.
in terms of the slickness of the operation.
Yes, it's completely different because Premier League is a model of professionalism. How a league should be treated in a professional way, you know.
And that's how people in Brazil look at the Premier League.
Yes, absolutely. In Brazil, you still have a lot of amateur things to do, amateur things going on. You don't have a league. You have the Brazilian FA running everything and running all the national championships. So you don't have a Brazilian league. You have the FA and you have the championships. And you don't have someone in the middle to control everything. So it can be very disorganized sometimes. Interests. There's a fight of interest happening all the time. So it's really a role model. It's like a completely different world, honestly.
Do the fans have the same arguments that fans here have? TV times, kick-off times being changed, travel, ticket prices. Do they have the exact same arguments put forward in Brazilian football as we hear here all the time?
Kickoff time is a big argument because we have matches starting at 9:45 p.m. During the week, and it really harms the fans who don't have ways to get home. Like they don't have the tube's not working anymore, you know. And yes, and attendance is a big deal in Brazil as well because the profile of the fans is changing there as it changed here years ago. So modernization of arenas, it changed the profile there, and people can't afford to go to every match. So it's big news if you have a stadium that's always full, and here it's just another Saturday afternoon, you know, and in Brazil it's not. And clubs are trying to adjust to it. So, of course, they look at the Premier League. The Premier League is a role model for many things, yeah.
That's probably something that nobody ever envisaged or imagined it's only 20 years ago, Martin, that the rest of the world looks at the Premier League and says, that's what we'd like. As you said about I know you mentioned the Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, but
everywhere,
other leagues too, South America.
Every continent in the world looks to the Premier League. And when you look at certain things that haven't happened on Scudamore's watch, not the stuff that has happened, the stuff that hasn't happened, the split, the 20 club split, the even share, all of that sort of stuff are things that he has fought for. So people, you can look at it and say, oh, it's just a business, it's just business, it is, and it is. His job was just the business, but he did certain things that we take for granted in this country that have made our league stronger. He resisted the idea that half a dozen clubs should get more money. He tried to find ways around that. Believe it or not, the 39th game, which I was hugely against, but the 39th game was a way, at the time, of trying to find a way around 6 clubs dominating the league all the time, or as it was then, probably 3 or 4 clubs dominating the league all the time. That was the idea that every club gets another £5 million. Scudamore's thought on that was that, well, £5 million at that time wouldn't make any difference to Manchester United, but it would make a difference to Reading or Derby County or teams that were at the bottom of the pile at that stage, and that would allow them to be more competitive. So it was an idea that wasn't going to greatly benefit the elite, but would have given a leg up to the clubs at the bottom. I still thought it was a bad idea, but you know, so he did certain things. La Liga, which looks a lot more open this season than it has been recently, have suddenly changed their television deal to be more in line with the Premier League, something that we take for granted, that if you're 20th or you're first, you get the same cut.
Yeah. OK, good stuff, guys. I'm going to talk a bit more about the Premier League and some of the decisions this week. One was the transfer window and also VAR as well being confirmed, introduced in the Premier League next season. We'll get on to that in part 3. We'll also talk about Gordon Taylor at the PFA too. That's coming next year on the Sunday Supplement. Welcome back with us this morning. Martin Samuel, Natalie, Gedra and James Olley. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. Back page of the Mail on Sunday. Jealous, guys. This is Wayne Rooney talking about some of his former England teammates jealous of England's success under Gareth Southgate. World Cup semi-finalists, of course, losing to Croatia. They play Croatia at Wembley this afternoon. The Nations League knockout game, or what is effectively a knockout. Back of the Sun. Daniel Sturridge's cousin exposed for trying to bet £10,000 on Daniel to move to Inter Milan last January. Of course, he went to West Brom in the end. We've just been talking about this man, Richard Scudamore, and that £5 million payoff from the Premier League after 19 years. He is on his way out. Daniel Taylor's column this morning. This is what we're coming on to right now. Taylor, Gordon Taylor at the PFA. Here's the fattest cat. He must go if the PFA is to serve its members and to continue to serve the game. It's also an issue addressed by Sam Wallace in his column this morning in the Sunday Telegraph. Should Taylor cling on at the PFA? Just ask the family of Jeff Astle, the former West Bromwich Albion footballer. The Astle family. It's an emphatic no. What is your view on the situation with Gordon Taylor, James?
I think it's very rare in any business, any walk of life, to have the same chief executive for 37 years. It's very, very rare. If you look at the way the PFA is structured, he earned, I think, 2.2 million last year. It's 10% of the PFA's total money. Apparently their internal sort of constitution says that there needs to be some sort of vote or some sort of offer to invite applications for a rival chief executive every 5 years. Apparently the story is that hasn't happened for at least 10. There are questions to answer there, I think, about whether the PFA is altruistically operating in the best interest of its members, or whether it's become a personal fiefdom that needs to be challenged.
What does it do? What is it to you, Natalie? What does the PFA stand for? What does it represent?
Yeah, when I was reading about it, it's not a big deal to ask for a governance review for an institution that has the same leader for 37 years. You know, I think it's only reasonable. And actually, it made me remember something that happened in Brazil a few years ago. The players felt like they weren't being represented well enough by its union, so they organized a movement and they founded a movement that lasted for 3 years, and it just fought for everything that they thought they should, and it opened the door. So I think it's only fair for players. It's just an example of players taking a lead, and I think it's only fair that things just they should be questioned. It's healthy for the game, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's a big challenge that Ben Purkis has taken on here, chairman of the PFA. Is it a battle? Is it a battle? And it'll be a bloody one. Is it a battle he's going to win? Can he win it?
Yeah, I think he can win it, because I think after 37 years there is invariably a movement for change in any area, really. So while Gordon will have his allies and he will have this bedrock of loyal support around him in place, there will be just as many people within the PFA who think that there needs to be change. And when you get a governance review, or if you can get any sort of vote, or you can get any sort of open discussion, which is what this will provoke, inevitably those voices for change will be heard, and they will grow, and there will be more people join that movement, and in the end a tipping point will come. So I think it's perfectly possible that this battle will be won, and it probably is. It is overdue. 37 years at the head of an organisation. You probably do need new voices. You probably do need new ideas. I can, you know, the sort of thing things that Gordon Taylor has failed to act upon when people are talking about the Jeff Astle case and the abuse cases and stuff. He's a man of his time, and you know, people with that sort of years of experience are often quite sort of slow to act. We need to take this into account and that into account and that into account. A newer voice, a younger voice would probably get things done a bit quicker. There would be more of a sense of urgency, and I think some of the issues that football are facing, it's that sense of urgency that is required.
Context, James, and the juxtaposition, it's been pointed out, Daniel Taylor's column, for example, this morning. It's not the only example, but a couple of £1 million on a Lowry painting, the match, compared to £100,000 invested in dementia research. Can you put those things into the same sentence?
No, I mean, it's suggested...
Well, how do they sit with you?
Extremely uncomfortably, because you know, I've read that it suggested that they've got £50 million in reserves, and when you think about the amount of play, I mean, look, the vast majority of certainly the high-profile members of the PFA will never need the PFA. Highly unlikely to, because they're going to have made their money. Okay, they might squander it, they might invest it badly, they might fall on hard times, but the vast majority, because of the money in the game, will probably never need the PFA for anything meaningful or serious. But the players at the lower end of the scale, the kids who come through 16, 17, 18 get released, or the guys who fall on hard times, League One, League Two clubs, or if clubs go into administration and they can't pay their players and they need help, you know, these are the people, and there are cases of it time and again where they should be getting more protection, they should be getting more help, the PFA should be more proactive, and it's impossible to reconcile that kind of money going on a painting versus somebody's livelihood.
He might say it's an investment, protecting it. He might do. OK, where does this end for Gordon Taylor? Is it the end? Will it be the end?
It's starting to look like, because he doesn't seem to have much support around the fact around the facts that are presenting themselves, you know, and the people who are challenging him, it's just not they are younger, of course, but it's just not that. What you mentioned about the other tires of the game is true, and he has the experience. The challengers of this case, they have lived this, and they have studied for this, and they are more connected. They feel more connected to the game. So it looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, this story is going to run and run, no question about that. Now, Sunday Supplement convention and popular wisdom says that when I introduce the show, the first question almost always exclusively goes to the man on my right. But what, Martin, if I was to say, let's play a game of rock, papers...
Rock, paper, scissors? Yeah, OK. Well, do you want to play it?
Rock, yeah, let's play it.
Let's go.
OK, let's go.
So...
You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Of course you do.
I don't know exactly where you're going with it. Yeah.
OK, come on, let's have a quick...
Right, 1, 2, 3... there you go. So it's a draw.
OK,
let's call it
a draw.
off.
All right, should it have been a draw in the Women's Super League game between Manchester City and Reading? We know this is the referee who played that very game because he'd forgotten his coin. He'd forgotten his coin.
He was physically incapable, apparently, of returning to the touchline and saying, has anyone got 50p? So the captain of England, Steph Houghton, played rock, paper, scissors with the captain of Reading. I don't know who won because someone's standing in the way, so you can't actually tell who wins in the video. But it's just an utterly ridiculous thing. And the guy's got suspended for it and everything, which, funnily enough...
David McNamara, the ref,
I wrote about it.
Yeah.
I wrote about it before he got suspended. It wasn't really about suspending the referee.
No.
It was about the idea that what we've got is the Women's Super League. You get this massive projection, Super League, and they're always doing these things to sort of massage the women's game into this position of prominence, when actually, at a very basic level, the game isn't there. So if you've got somebody in charge of a game who thinks that the way we start a game, if I've forgotten my 50p, is to go and play rock, paper, scissors, well, then that isn't a Super League in any stretch of the imagination. That really isn't a Super League. So you've got to get everything right before. And this is the sort of wider point that has been missed. Everyone's thought about it, it's about disciplining the referee. It's not. It is about this juxtaposition of this idea of there's this Super League and everything's big and, you know, and it's the way that it's trying to run before you can walk, that the game needs to grow organically and then it will grow and it will grow and it will become better. Whereas at the moment, everything it's on this massive fast track when they haven't got some of the real basic things in place yet, i.e. the quality of the referees.
Including the coin toss, yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm not particularly married to the toss of a coin.
I know you're not. But what about it? Just to finish off on this point, Martin, the 21-day ban, is that excessive? I know you've got a wider point on this, but it's 21 days for, you know, the guy didn't have a coin and he obviously thought it'd be funny, didn't he?
Well, I don't know what he thought.
Okay.
I don't know what he thought. I don't know why he couldn't just walk back to the touchline and say, "Can I borrow 50p?" It's not. It wasn't a bus ride. I mean, it's you know, he's there in a matter of seconds. He's back. They toss the coin. He, you know, gives it back to, you know, the old boy in the cloth cap. He's got it off, I presume.
Yeah. Okay. Excessive or not? 21 days.
Excessive or not? I don't really. Yeah, I see. It doesn't really matter. That wasn't my issue.
I know it wasn't your issue. I'm still asking you.
So, you know, that wasn't what I was writing about, really.
No, it wasn't.
About whether he should be suspended or not.
OK, let's move on to a few other points, administration points. VAR next season. Another not in a Premier League innovation, but it's something that English football has been demanding for some time. Next season in the Premier League, we see it.
Yeah, I think it got to the point where it just didn't make any sense not having it anymore, you know, because all the big leagues are embracing the VAR, and in South America as well. Libertadores already has it since last year, actually, and in the World Cup it was very successful. But one thing that caught my attention was that they want to study a few details a little bit more, especially how they are going to communicate with the people in the stadiums, because the experiences we've had here in England and everyone who attended a match with VAR at some point had that feeling of what's going on, you know, what are people thinking, what are they discussing, because when you are watching it from the TV, it's clearer. And that is something that needs improvement, and I think it's good that they are aware of that. But it got to the point where it needs to happen.
Why can't we see the decisions played out on the big screen? Because people are looking at their mobile phones, reviewing the incidents straight away themselves. So if people are doing that, why can't it be accessible to everybody in the stadium? Look up, it's on the big screen.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you. But but it was very confusing, and it took very long. And the length of the decisions, I think it was something that got better during the World Cup, for example. Yeah. You didn't see that happening. We saw that in FA Cup and in the cups, but the part of engaging everyone who's at the stadium with the VAR, yeah. I think that's a challenge.
Yeah, I think it is, but I think it's also important. James, a word on the transfer window as well, because that was another bit of business that the Premier League took care of in the week as well, which is that the transfer window will close again before the start of the season. But it was a close call.
Very tight vote, 11-9 among the 20 Premier League clubs, for a number of reasons, not least because I think there's quite a few clubs who feel they're vulnerable to getting their players poached once the window's closed by overseas teams. Closing the window early obviously has an issue for the teams that come up from the Championship, particularly the team that's in the playoff final, because they have 2-3 weeks less than everybody else to go and acquire players. And you could argue that perhaps the way it's played out at Fulham had an impact, because they obviously signed 5 players on deadline day. Jokanovic never got his team together, and he's out of a job now. So it is a contentious issue, but I think that the Premier League feel that eventually the sort of chat at FIFA level is that the other leagues will eventually come into line with this, and they're hoping that by kind of pioneering it and committing to it for another year, that those leagues will fall into line. And then when it is sort of a global deadline, or at least a European-wide deadline, then that issue about, at least the issue about clubs poaching players after the English window's closed goes away.
Yeah, it certainly does feel like there needs to be some consistency across the major leagues in world football. OK, next up, we're going to talk about this story. It's Daniel Sturridge, and it's exposed. His cousin bet £10,000 on Daniel Sturridge to move to Inter Milan. He didn't. He went to West Brom in the end, but Daniel Sturridge has still been charged by the FA for breaching their betting regulations. That's coming next here on the Sunday Supplement. OK, let's talk about this man now, and it's Daniel Sturridge, charged by the Football Association with breaching their pretty stringent betting regulations, backed into trouble. A story in The Sun this morning says that his cousin tried to bet £10,000, tried to put £10,000 on Daniel to move to Inter Milan last January. He didn't. He went on loan in the end to West Bromwich Albion. It doesn't stop the story coming out, though, Martin. You've written about betting in football. The inference in the FA's charges is that Sturridge has passed on insider information, privileged information, that it's been passed on to family members or friends who then use that information, that privileged information, to go and bet on his future. And that's not necessarily an argument that you subscribe to, is it?
Well, passed on, or he's asked by his family what he's doing, and he tells what is he meant to do. This is one of my points. A number of points here, but one of them is, what are you meant to do as a professional footballer? Any third party starts a book, starts a market on your career, where you're going to go, what you're going to do. Daniel Sturridge hasn't asked any bookmakers to open a book on where he's going. Mm-hmm. They have chosen to do that. And for that reason, he's got to take a vow of silence in January, so that if his mum says to him, what are your plans, Daniel, he can't tell her, just in case she tells somebody else and that person then puts a bet on. That's fundamentally wrong. The easiest way to fix sport, the easiest sports to be fixed, should I say, are individual sports. Tennis, snooker, darts, anything that's individual, because you need to get to one person. If you can get to that one person, then you can fix that game. Football's really hard to fix, because there's 11 people, and there's 11 people on the other side as well, which is why any betting scandal in the past, any match-fixing scandal, invariably involves goalkeepers and things like that, because they're about the only people that can let a ball in through their legs or whatever. Even then, it still needs a set of circumstances, and the defender needs to get beaten, and the shot needs to be on target, and all of these things. Really hard to fix football, unless you turn it into an individual sport. And that's what the bookmaking companies are doing all the time. They're turning it into an individual sport. Where will this player go? Who is the next manager to be sacked? These are individual decisions. These are bets over which one person has control. So they have created this problem themselves. I'm very, very dubious that you can get a £10,000 bet, it's with Paddy Power, on Daniel Sturridge a £10,000 bet. I've got a phone here. If I was ever allowed to switch it on in the television studio, I'd like to phone Paddy Power now and see if we can get 10 grand on a player transfer to take place. Pulisic to Chelsea. Let's see if we can get 10 grand on Pulisic to Chelsea. Because I would wager that if you phone Paddy Power and try to put £10,000 on an individual transfer taking place, they wouldn't take it.
They might take it this morning. John Richardson's written that he's going to Liverpool.
Yeah, they would. Well, OK, yeah, there you go. Tell Rico to see if we can get 10 grand on Paddy Power on that, and they would presume that he knew something. I'm just very sceptical about the idea that you can place £10,000 on an individual transfer, because I know people who tried to bet with Paddy Power on horses that were 5 to 4 on, and they couldn't get on. So, you know, for any significant sum, couldn't get on. Bookmakers don't like it if you win. And they are creating these markets that are open to exploitation and then crying foul when they're exploited. If it's so easy to fix these sort of markets and do away with the markets. Don't have any bets on the next manager to be sacked. Don't have any bets on the next manager to be appointed. Don't have any bets on where a player is going to go, because they're individual bets, so they're open to corruption. If you want to have a bet on England to beat Croatia today, or Croatia to beat England, go ahead. But, you know, if you want to have a bet on, you know, Gareth Southgate to eat a ham sandwich on the touchline, well, there's one person that's in control of that bet, and that means that bet is open to corruption. So why would you create that market? You didn't dignify the pie man, did you, in your piece in the Mail a couple of days ago? You didn't, did you? No. Why are the regulations so stringent? Why are they so tight? This has been ongoing. Well, it's November now, so this is a 9-10 month investigation into Daniel Sturridge and the communications that have taken place between himself and various family members and friends. But why are the regulations so strict?
Well, because the idea, the fundamental idea at the heart of this is that you are in some way compromising the integrity of the sport by siphoning off information for financial gain. You know, I think this story takes a new twist when it's a family member, when it's someone within the inner circle who's alleged to have profited from this. We're talking about somebody making £17,000, so £10,000 at 17 to 10 to win 17. Daniel Sturridge was on 100 grand a week then. If a family member of his needs £17,000 that badly, you know, don't take the holiday, sell a car, you know, don't have the shopping spree that weekend. Why would you compromise? Why would you leave yourself vulnerable to this? I mean, I don't know. To be fair to Daniel,
that Daniel Sturridge tipped the guy off. We
don't know. We don't know that. And what I would also say is I don't know. I'm not privy to the personal relationships within the family. I don't know who gets on and how regularly they meet up or anything like that. But assuming that all things are being equal here, and that somebody within Sturridge's close family has said, I need to, there's a chance I can make 17 grand here. Somebody within that circle should be saying, hang on a minute, think about this, for 17 grand.
Natalie, do you get this country's, the perception that this country is obsessed with gambling?
I'm quite amazed with that, actually. When I first moved here, I was impressed with how this is such a cultural thing, because, well, in Brazil, it's not at all. It's the legislation's kind of grey because it's really old. It's from 1946, so it doesn't cover, obviously, internet gambling, but people do gamble on internet, on websites that are hosted outside Brazil. Mm-hmm. But you can't have a Brazilian website, a Brazilian gambling website. You can't have business. If you walk on the streets, you're not going to find betting business. And back in 1982, actually, there was a big scandal on betting in football in Brazil, and that really stained the image of betting in sports. So it's not a common thing. I don't know people who bet.
Did that involve players? That particular.
Not at all. That's another thing that I was surprised. You can bet on anything basically here, and back then they usually bet. Even these days they bet on matches, who's going to win, results and things like that. Not transfer market. You know, I was very surprised to hear that. It's a very cultural thing. It's impressive for someone who's standing from the outside. It is impressive how it's just here. You know, it's a habit, and yeah.
I mean, the point to make about the transfer, Martin's right. The liquidity in these markets is non-existent. You'd do very well to get more than 20, 50 quid on a transfer market like that. But the only reason you're ever going to bet on something like that, with any authority, any confidence, is if you know something.
Otherwise, it's a guess. You see, that's what they want. They want people having a guess. They don't want, the terrible thing here, and this shows you the vulnerability here. That bet lost. This £10,000 bet that was supposedly taken.
If it was placed, yeah.
If it was placed, right? Because there's an email on there that doesn't mention £10,000. It confirms that a bet was placed. I'd like to see if it was £10,000 or if it was about 25 quid. But, you know, that bet went down the tubes anyway. It didn't go to Inter Milan. It was a losing bet. So even the person who thought they had inside information, the inside information turned out to be rubbish. That's why these markets are so good, because, you know, it's for mugs. It's, you know, have a guess on where Ruben Loftus-Cheek will go in the January transfer window. Unless you know, you might as well toss a coin. Apart from if you toss a coin, the odds are at least 50-50. They're not 50-50 in these markets.
No. Tossing coins a bit passé, Martin.
Yeah, what, paper, scissors?
Paper, scissors.
Come on. 1, 2, 3. See?
Had to happen.
See, that's, you know...
We perfectly choreographed. We set it up before the show, didn't we? We knew that time, yeah. OK, so this case will be judged by the FA's Independent Regulatory Commission. But as we know, the FA are very, very confident in these situations and are pushing, or will push hard, as we know, for a pretty significant ban, suspension.
Having got rid of their betting sponsor, when was it, about a year ago?
Yes.
Yeah, about a year ago, yeah. Sorry, carry on.
What would you expect if this case is proven?
Well, I mean, it could range from anything from a fine to a suspension. What do you
think? What do you think is appropriate in the circumstances based on their regulations?
I would think a fine. I don't think he's done something. He's not done something that compromises the integrity of a match or a competition. We're not talking about he's saying, well, actually, we've got 5 players who are injured, the public don't know about it, so maybe bet against Liverpool this weekend. It's nothing like that. You know, this is, and as Martin says, transfers are capricious by their nature. You know, they collapse at the 11th minute, 11th hour, all the time.
So people on Twitter who follow us gave us that kind of brevity.
Yeah. But you know, this isn't. I don't think at the extreme end of the scale. I think I think football generally has to look at its relationship with betting. You know, I think we were talking before. 60%, I think, of the top 2 tier teams have got a sponsor that's involved with betting. You can't watch TV on a Saturday between 11 and 6 and not see Ray Winston.
95% of adverts during live football matches in the last year, 95% are adverts for betting companies. 95%.
I mean that has to be unhealthy, and as Martin says, when you can bet on, I mean, the one that gets me is first throw-in. You can bet on the first throw-in in a football match. Now, it obviously takes an immense amount to try and rig a whole game or to try and get a certain player to score or concede a goal or whatever. But you just need to be your central midfielder, captain, for example, just says to your striker from the kick-off, give it to me, and he puts it straight out of play. And within 5 seconds, everybody who knew that was going to happen has made their money. The game can carry on. It's 0-0, no issue whatsoever. And the kind of, when I was first alerted to something like that, I was told about, you know, markets in the Far East where you can get huge amounts of cash liquidity, big liquidity on a market like that. That cannot be healthy for the game.
No, sure. OK, so just actually, the point you just made about the 95% of adverts, of betting adverts, Sky are taking, in terms of the corporate social responsibility, that from next season, in the commercial breaks, only one betting ad will be...
No, so, but that
there
has come
will only
about.
be one betting ad per commercial break.
But that has come about because of the complete overload that has developed in the last few years.
Yeah, sure. OK, next up, we're going to talk about Claudio Ranieri. How did Fulham come to appoint their new manager? More on that next. OK, dilly ding, dilly dong. He's back. Claudio Ranieri, back his 18th managerial appointment. Says he loves the game. Without football, it's my life. For me, it's important. I started at 16. That's all I know. He's got to find a way to take Fulham out of the bottom three. Let's first talk Jokanovic. Was it harsh to sack him? And Ranieri, is he the right man to lead Fulham away from the bottom three?
Well, the first thing to say is I think Jokanovic, you know, did a tremendous job in getting them up. He took over when they were really struggling in the Championship. Gave them one of the best days of their lives in the playoff final. But the problem is that when you spend £100 million in the transfer window, and I think only 2 clubs spent more, it shortens the time frame in which you've got to be successful. And where he fell down was in struggling to fit in these new players into a team that had won the right, effectively, to play in the Premier League. And it struck me a little bit of history repeating itself with QPR a few years ago, when they came up, spent a load of money, brought in a load of new players, established Premier League players or journeymen who were on big money, and you had a dressing room where the guys who got this team up from the Championship were saying, hang on a minute, why am I not playing when this guy's just come in? And he made, I think, 33 changes in 12 games, which is more than any other Premier League manager. And he didn't know his best team, and ultimately he's paid the price for that.
Yeah. Ranieri, popular figure, colourful character, and of course we'll always associate him with winning the Premier League with Leicester City, Natalie. But are you surprised that Fulham turned to him?
I was a bit, but at the same time, when I saw the news, I was like, how cool is it that Ranieri is back, you know, because he's such a charismatic character. At least he's going to do well for the self-esteem of the club and of the fans. So that's good. And in his first statements, in his first interviews, he mentioned the defensive side, which is obviously a problem for Fulham, worst defense of the Premier League, and he's good at it. He has the knowledge, and it's important for him. He made it very clear. It's very important for an Italian manager to do well in defensive terms. So that is already a very good start for Fulham. I'm happy he's back. I think it's going to be good.
I think I can name your last press conference.
Ranieri, after they won, after they got the title. Yeah, after they got the title.
Would you agree with me when I say he had us eating out the palm of his hand that day?
Ranieri is a lovely guy. It doesn't take much to get the press eaten out the palm of your hand. I mean, Ranieri is a lovely guy. He's a charming man. I would imagine he's not the same as a coach, because you don't get, you know, you don't actually win the league by saying dilly dee, dilly dong, or whatever it was every 2 seconds. I mean, you win it by organising a team magnificently week in, week out against a variety of opponents, and that's exactly what he did. Whether he's got what he needs at Fulham is another matter. I mean, he said about Leicester, when he went to Leicester, they go away to Austria, and he watches a couple of training sessions, and he said, we were like the RAF. And, you know, he saw the speed that he had there, and his, you know, transition, or counter-attack, as it used to be called, you know, such an important part of the game. And he saw that at Leicester he had all of the ingredients of a great counter-attacking team, and that's how he built that team. Your lot, by the way, Crystal Palace, it could be a great counter-attacking team.
Very dismissive.
They could be a great. No, just a thought just popped into my mind. They potentially a great counter-attacking team at Crystal Palace.
What's going wrong?
I don't know, but Whether he's got that at Fulham, I don't know. If you organise a defence, that's got to be an improvement, because you can't go through the season, what is it, average 3 goals a game?
31 goals.
31 goals or whatever, nearly 3 goals a game they're conceding. You know, you can't start like that. You can't start like that. I mean, I don't care who you've got centre forward. You're not going to outscore. You're not going to outscore letting 3 goals in a game virtually.
No,
so.
Sure.
You'd like to see him do well. I think it's amazing, really, that the guy that pulled off the greatest coaching performance, probably in the history of English football, can only get a job at the bottom of the league. I think that's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
But I wish
he is back, though, yeah. Claudio Ranieri back in business. A piece in the Sunday Times this morning with Jonathan Northcroft. Natalie, I'd like to touch on Brazil, because you saw them play Uruguay on Friday night at the Emirates. And the highlight of that game, having watched it for me, was finally, I thought, it was exposed beyond doubt, beyond reasonable doubt, the non-existent relationship between Neymar and Edinson Cavani.
I think what happened in that match is the type of thing that happens in football matches, you know, contact. It's Brazil-Uruguay. It was very Brazil-Uruguay, you know, in terms of fouls and 8 yellow cards. But because it was Neymar and Cavani and everybody was watching them and everything that has happened between them, there was a lot of talk regarding it. But I think it happens all the time among very different players. Of course, it's clear that his relationship with Suarez is much closer than his relationship with Cavani. But I think that's just how it goes in big groups, you know. You get along better with some than others. And it was...
But it was that challenge from Cavani. It felt like when the opportunity came along that Cavani was going to take a swing at him, and he did eventually.
Yeah, I think we'll never know. Actually, right after the match, I interviewed Cavani, and when I identified myself as a Brazilian journalist, he was like, he was kidding, of course, but he smiled and said, "Watch out for you. What are you going to ask me?" Yeah. And he was fine with it, and neither Neymar or Cavani talked about it in detail after the match. Mm-hmm. But yeah, everybody was expecting to see it.
Yeah. And you'll watch Brazil against Cameroon at MK Dons as well on Tuesday. Are you comfortable with the national side playing their friendly games outside of Brazil, but also at Stadium MK? Does it bother you?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't bother me that they're playing in Milton Keynes. I talked to the Brazilian FA and they clarified that the stadium attends every UEFA standard, so it was good for them and they are playing there. And there's a big discussion if Brazil should play more at home, but they say that they are going to play at home before Copa America, and there's another company who negotiates this right where they are going to play or not. There's a big chance that they come back to Europe in March because they want to play against big European teams. That hasn't happened yet, so it was worse. In different times, this matter of Brazil not playing in Brazil, it was worse with Dunga before the 2014 World Cup because we weren't playing the qualifying. But now that we played qualifiers in South America and in Brazil, it's okay, it's manageable.
Yeah, sure.
There's very little connection between the Brazilian people and the national team anymore. You notice that in the 2014 World Cup.
Yes.
OK, guys, we've got to leave it there. We've run out of time, unfortunately. Thanks very much to Martin, to Natalie and to James for joining us here on the Sunday Supplement this morning. OK, big games coming up. Wembley Stadium first up. Of course, it's England against Croatia. That's from 1 o'clock. Northern Ireland against Austria later on this afternoon, 4:30. Switzerland against Belgium, 7:40. All those games, of course, on Sky. OK, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget you can download the podcast from all the usual places. You can catch up with the show. It's on demand. We'll see you next time, same place, 9:30. See you then. Bye-bye.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.